Hello there and welcome to the ultimate guide to Company of Heroes. This is going to be aimed at you, a beginner that wants to become competent, wants to get into ranked games and feel like they have a fighting chance. It's going to be an absolute nuclear bomb worth of knowledge though. We're going to get into some really deep subjects and a lot of them. Let's go over to this screen here where I show you everything we're going to talk about today. We've got three pillars. We've got the basics. We've got the knowledge and then how to apply it. And first of all, I mean, CoH is the best, to be honest. I love this game. I love this series. And the reason is it's almost like a perfect blend between kind of great competitive game with a lot to it, a lot of intellectual stimulation, and just fantastic character, fantastic art design. But the main thing that brings them together is community. You have this great game that's like this artistic creation by a studio not focused on the competitive side. You do have the core basics of a really good competitive game with ranked, with tournaments, with all the ability to apply yourself and have some really good accomplishments and feel like you've done something. And then the community blends it together into just one awesome series, in my opinion. We are the glue that makes it work. So that is why, in my opinion, it's just worth getting into. It's worth applying yourself to. And if you're going to do it, I reckon 1v1's the best mode. I think team games are fantastic. They have their place. They're a great way to have a few beers on a Friday night with your buddies in team speak and be just, enjoying the battle. But they don't give you the full sense of satisfaction and, quite frankly, the thrill of victory, of knowing you were the sole determinant of your future. You were the reason that you were victorious. And that is why 1v1 is the best, because it just gives you that feel that you are at war and there's no one there to help you, and all of the depth of the RTS come to the fore. You have to think of so many more elements. To master 1 versus 1 is an accomplishment. 4v4 is a lot more casual. There's nothing wrong with that. If you want a good blend of 2, by the way, 2 versus 2 is the way to go. But for learning purposes, there's no better learning environment than 1 versus 1. That's AI to start with, and then human opponents as soon as you're ready. Let's get straight into it now. Company Heroes is all about resources. And one of the most important resources is space and time. They lead to victory points. They lead to the ability to control the battlefield and, quite frankly, to dominate your opponent. Without space, without time, you are nothing. So let's load into a game now and let's see what I mean by that. Okay, we're going to go through all the resources. We're going to start annotating the screen today. Today is going to work like a seminar. It's going to be roughly 2 hours. I'm going to give you absolutely everything I know. And then I'll have one video I can always point to that I can at least say that I tried to help people and I gave it my all. I really want this guide to be that. I want it to be my contribution as a guide to the community. Just briefly before we start, who am I though? I've already dumped you straight into the war, haven't I? But I'm AE. I've run massive tournaments in the past, got ongoing projects at the moment with the Master League, I've done in-person tournaments, done a lot of commentary. So I've been the commentator for the big tournaments since around 2015 times. That's 6 years of having to be completely embroiled with the highest echelon of play. All those elite players I've been talking to, I've made in real life friends of, and I've had to understand how they play to be able to commentate on what they do and what makes them great players as well. So I've had key privileged access to what goes into making you a very good player. Me myself, I am kind of above average-ish, maybe in the top 40% of 1 versus 1 players, something like, maybe a little bit. I'm probably being harsh on myself. But yeah, I'm okay. I can give anybody a good game, and I'm proud of that, so I can apply the basics. And that's exactly what this guide is going to be going through. So let's go back over to the game now and start talking about what I mean by these resources. So, you can see these resources on your screen. You've got manpower, fuel, munitions, and also population cap. Now they're very important, but without the ability to control this map and win this battle, what are you? Yes, they help. Fuel is very helpful. Manpower is definitely the most helpful of the traditional elements, but space-time, which is the combination of both space and time, it's in the name, and Albert Einstein taught us this, is the the biggest contributing factor. The quicker you can act, the more pressure you can exert on the battlefield, the more of the resources you will take in. So fuel, munitions, victory points, it all comes with the ability to exert pressure and to control the battlefield. Company of Heroes has a great USP and a great thing that makes it superior to a lot of other RTS games, real-time strategy games, is space is not forgotten. Yes, StarCraft has expansions. It has the idea that if you build more bases, you'll control more resources. But in this game, the actual battlefield is laid out as a jigsaw puzzle of all the things you can control. We'll come on to this later on in topics such as map control, which is an individual kind of practical thing. And we'll get onto that later. But first and foremost, you must know that space-time is the most valuable. Going down from there, you'll also then see that I consider of the traditional resources, manpower to be by far the most powerful. The reason for that is, let's build some bloody units, shall we? The reason for that is, it's your ability to capture space and to fight your opponent away from that space. Manpower is numero uno. It's you build infantry with it. You also build tanks with a combination of manpower and fuel, and everything comes back to it. If you lose individual soldiers of your squad, let's give ourselves some more resources, shall we? We're going to stop looking at the resource meter because I'm about to use a cheat mod, which is a modification for Company of Heroes. You can't use it in ranked games, don't worry. We're going to give ourselves all of the resources. Infinite, yes please. And we're also going to say no to the UI. I'm going to delete you today, and we're going to have speed ups on. There we go. That's certainly going to help things. So let's start capping up the field a little bit there, and we're going to start to talk about what happens if we lose individual soldiers. So it costs us to get this combat engineer, it costs us 170 manpower. When he starts to die, you don't want to buy him again. So what you do, you retreat him back to base. This is the core mechanic of Company of Heroes, and quite frankly, this is something you should already know. The base level for understanding the game, I expect you to have the extreme fundamentals read on a guide somewhere. But that's why manpower is so bloody important. As soon as you get him back to base, you reinforce him. But every time you do, I had instant on, so I couldn't show you. But it was like 18 manpower per squad or something around that, meaning that your pool of manpower is less. You get 261 income per minute, and if you're spending it constantly on reinforcement, you won't be able to build more squads. So that is why the ability to control your manpower and not die as much, quite frankly. The point I'm trying to make is it's better to kill than it is to die. Preservation of individual soldiers is key to Company of Heroes' success. Putting yourself into a fighting position of superiority is so bloody important that even if you already know this, I just have to drill it into you, and it will come into every facet of this guide later on. Next is fuel. The reason that fuel is so important is also the reason that manpower is so important. With fuel, you can build vehicles, right? So we're going to build tier 1 first. Let's get that done instantly, and then that gives us the ability to build tier 3, and from there we're going to build a tank. The tiers are labelled 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 0 because you start with the headquarters, so we couldn't really count that in our community. So with a tank, this costs 70 fuel, by the way. This has the capacity to fight the enemy without incurring manpower losses. It is not a drain on your manpower economy because you do not have to retreat a tank and reinforce it. So with combat engineers, you can repair it once it incurs damage. But this is an anti-infantry tank. This will deal manpower casualties to your opponents, and its fighting efficiency is so powerful. That is why in Company of Heroes, controlling the fuel points is so vital. They give +7 per point. The others only give +3 per point. In Company of Heroes 1, the high fuels, which is what they're called, were even more important because the standard points didn't give any fuel. And that is how Company of Heroes 3 will work. So the fight for fuel points is going to become even more vital in 2 years' time or thereabouts when Company of Heroes 3 is released. So fuel is so important. To manage your fuel economy is vital, and to not float manpower. I've got 10,000 manpower and 10,000 fuel here. What I mean is to have more than you need, to have a bank and a reserve of resources. If I had 140 fuel in the bank with my income being 23, that'd be bad. That would mean I hadn't built a tank, and that would mean my application force on the battlefield is inefficient. So the fuel economy and managing your fuel economy is very important. Next on my list, after manpower, then fuel, is veterancy. Now, if we're to focus on the T70, veterancy works by every damage I inflict on the opponent gives me 75% contribution to my experience. The experience meter here is veterancy experience. When it hits maximum, I get veterancy 1, and so on. 25% of damage received also contributes. So just being in battle and killing and being hurt gives me veterancy. Veterancy 1 for this bad boy, it's going to be very, very helpful indeed, and I'm going to show you why now, because if you look at here, it goes secure mode veteran ability. So it gives me an ability that is locked from the starting position. With secure mode, my T70 can capture points. Can you imagine the ability to capture a point? And if there's a machine gun there, for example, the machine gun will not hurt me anywhere near as much. It's fantastic. From there, gun accuracy and rate of fire will be increased. This is basically damage per minute. The amount of damage I inflict on my opponent will go up with Veterancy 2. And then Veterancy 3, finally, maneuverability. My T70 can go, if I've got a situation evolving over here, I'm getting attacked, my prepared position play is in danger, my T70 can traverse the battlefield, go along that white line, so maybe I want to go up here a little bit more. That's another little tip for you later, we'll come on to. Veterancy just so bloody powerful. And yes, munitions are good, and that's why I put them in order, by the way. Space-time all the way to munitions. Munitions are the least powerful of all the resources. The reason is because veterancy leads to upgrades that are permanent. Permanent and free. It comes just from fighting. Munitions it costs, and the upgrades it gives you are often less powerful. For example, for conscript squads, you can upgrade later on to use Molotov grenades, which are 20 munitions per Molotov. They're very useful. An anti-tank grenade is fantastic. You can damage the engine of a slightly damaged vehicle and make its maneuverability far lower until it's repaired, which would thwart an enemy's advance. That's a tactic we're going to come about later. I've upgraded here a hazard removal package on my combat engineers. This means that they can clear mines. They can detect stealthed mines. Very, very useful. But if I had veterancy, I would be able to repair faster, which is at veterancy 2. Okay, that's way more powerful. That means a damaged tank such as this bad boy, when he goes back to base to be repaired, doesn't have to be in base, but that's the safest place, I could get him back on the battlefield way sooner. So you can already start to see how veterancy is more powerful than munitions. I mean, munitions are bloody good though. With munitions, for example, I could plant mines, which I've got speed up, don't forget, they don't plant that fast. I could plant mines and thwart an enemy's advance a lot of the time, unless they have a minesweeper in that exact moment. So yeah, that's how it works. That's the order in which I'd go with resources, and that's how you want to prioritize it. Prioritize on playing quickly and controlling the map. The rest will follow. But in order for the rest to follow, you have to take care of your manpower. If you take care of that, you will get more fuel. With more fuel, you'll inflict damage on your opponent's manpower economy, and you'll control the map better. Veterancy gives you the ability to fight better overall, and munitions are an added extra that's very useful. You don't want to float any of them. Make sure your control of them is good. It's a juggling act. It's like plate spinning, but you're going to have to join the circus if you want to be good at Company of Heroes. Boom, there we go. And breathe. Next, factions. We're going to talk about factions in 3 ways. First of all, the core units. Now, I've started to build an army that kind of represents what your core units want to be, but in order to make it complete, I'm going to want some support weapons as well. And there's two in particular I'm going to want. That's a Maxim machine gun and an anti-tank gun. These arrive from the off-map. They come from one of the entrances to the map. So, core infantry is your main fighting power in Company of Heroes. For the Soviets, it's the conscript. For the United States forces, it's the rifleman. For the British forces, it's the infantry sections. For the OKW, it's the Volksgrenadiers. And for the Wehrmacht, it's the Grenadier. Now, the reason that they are the most powerful unit in the game is because they give you space and time and control. And that is why it's so vital in 1 versus 1 especially, or in ranked especially, to split your forces up and to get good at micromanagement. Micromanagement being the RTS term for the ability to mechanically control your unit and deal with dexterity, the small nimble movements of the game. That's why it's called micro. So, yes, infantry is your main pressure applied to the battlefield. They're also the thing that fights against your opponent's pressure, their infantry. And that is why having 3 or possibly 4 mainline infantry squads is the way to go in Company of Heroes. Why you don't want more than that is because as your population cap goes up, your manpower per minute goes down. It starts at 300 and it works its way down to 200 for every bit of population cap you fill. You can go up to 100 on the population cap. So yeah, 3 and 4 is about right if you want to keep your manpower income per minute healthy. And that's why we play with 3 and 4. And to be honest, any more than that, the human mind, you're going to want to start blobbing up your units. Blobbing in RTS means, especially Company of Heroes, means to put together and to use as one. So it's like one group of units. And to be honest, that is inefficient. It works situationally, and even high level players will blob occasionally. But we're going to come on to that in our tactics later on. For now, that's core infantry. The next unit is the humble worker unit. So with the Soviets, and I find this the best beginner faction because their squad sizes are the largest, giving you the best margin for error. So you've already seen that worker units can plant mines, they can repair tanks. They also have access for the Soviets and Wehrmacht to the flamethrower. So you can already see that they are your utility. The name is, it's in the name, it's a combat engineer, it's an engineer, it's a worker, it's your utility. And it offers you things your other things can't do, and it gives you an effect on the battlefield that is special, but is very, very necessary to being functional, and that's why it's a core unit. Next is the machine gun and the anti-tank gun. Support weapons are your defense in a game. If your aggression has failed you, if your ultra-aggressive starting build order, meaning the units you build and what order they come in, if it is not gotten you complete dominance of the battlefield, you're going to want support weapons, quite frankly. A Maxim, because the Soviets are not built around the machine gun in the same way that the Wehrmacht are. The Wehrmacht start with a machine gun as a buildable unit from the headquarters building Tier 0. The Soviets build it from Tier 2 because, quite frankly, they're meant to be a more mobile faction. And machine guns, by their very nature, are something you set up in a direction. They're not fluid. They are a support weapon, and they give you map control, because if an enemy wants to be here right now, which he probably doesn't, he definitely wants to be an enemy though, he is going to get suppressed. You see this here? His fighting capacity is now massively reduced. He can fire very few shots per minute, and also his movement. So you may as well retreat or die. And machine guns are very good for that. You've got anti-tank guns, which are famous combat mechanic in Company of Heroes. I say that because if your opponent gets a tank before you, you want an anti-tank. So anti-tank, they fire shells. They are as you say, I've already described them. And it's actually common in current Company of Heroes meta, with meta meaning the RTS term for the most efficient way to play, as dictated by the community at that point in time. It doesn't mean it is, it's just what we think is that through our combined community hive mind experience, it's actually meta right now to have 2 anti-tank guns at any one time, because that is a really good way to take a tank out. So that's your core army. The only thing I'm going to add to that is a T-70 light tank for the Soviets has always been a core feature. The reason being is that conscripts tend to be not the best at killing infantry. They're great at surviving and putting a degree of pressure, but they're kind of like an underpowered hose versus a fire. You know, it's like a garden hose. They'll keep the fire at bay, the fire being your opponent, but eventually you're gonna want that big ass fire hydrant, huge Super Soaker 7000. That's your T-70. The fighting capacity of the T-70 versus infantry is quite frankly fantastic. It mauls infantry whilst incurring no manpower casualties of its own, as I described earlier. So, you know, a T-70 in that sense is a core combatant for the Soviets. From there, the rest of it is specialist units. You've got a penal battalion who cost a lot more. You saw that they cost 290 manpower. They're great, but they don't have as much utility as a conscript. For example, a conscript can build a sandbag, which gives you cover. We'll come on to cover in a moment. To be honest, yeah, cover's a tactic we're going to come on to because I actually think it's so core to the game. I expect you to understand it already, but I'm going to teach you how to fight with it later on in this seminar. So, penal battalions, yeah, we've also got snipers. They are glass cannon units. They're very easy to kill. They have got the same health as an individual soldier of any squad, and but the best thing about them is they're one shot, one kill, and that's why they're a glass cannon, because they can deal a lot of lethality, but they're very, very dangerous to use. Another specialist unit is a mortar. Indirect fire is a topic to be discussed later. Indirect fire is not a core combatant in 1 versus 1. It's an added element of, you know, it gives you that extra dimension. You can assault the enemy without them being able to assault you because the range on a mortar is very far. Also, the Soviet mortar, and I believe the Wehrmacht mortar, can fire smoke, which can obviously allow you to flank a machine gun. So there's a lot of utility you can begin to add to your army with these units, and commanders do the same. This commander, for example, gives you access to shock troops, another elite unit. It also gives you a flame tank, which, as you can imagine, is very good against infantry, not so great against tanks. It gives you an IS-2, which is a big, heavy, lumbering, very expensive tank. So it's like all your eggs in one basket. Flame artillery, very situational, and cloaked AT guns, meaning your tanks can't be spotted until they fire unless infantry is close to them. So you can see it's very situational. A commander is very situational, and if a commander's ever used in every game of a tournament on one of my YouTube videos, you know that's not how they're meant to work. The design of a commander is it's meant to be an added flavour, and that is why, as you will have seen on my guide, it comes last. And to be honest, you're going to want to focus on core units first, then specialists of the core tech tree, then commanders. So don't go into buying commanders right now. You want to learn the game properly, learn the base army first. Next, let's go to the practical elements. By the way, core units, before I do that actually, practical is very important. I just want to readdress something. I haven't obviously gone through all 5 factions, but every faction has its core units and they do differ. The best way to learn it is to research and watch live streams, videos, and read guides. And to be honest, I'm going to watch 3 games today in this mega super duper ultimate guide, and you'll pick up a lot from that because I'm going to choose the different factions from the start. But yes, indeed. Core units we've gone through. Let's go to practical now. I've run out of coffee. I'm going to have an intermission around here-ish when I run out of steam, where I get another drink. And we're going to do practical next. Screen control is really bloody important. Screen control can come in multiple ways, but that's your way of bloody assessing the battlefield, is it not? The most obvious way, we're going to start with the classic RTS control. That is using the minimap to get a rough idea of where you are, and using edging. I'm not on about prolonging your orgasm here. I'm on about, that's a joke. I'm going to try to put more jokes in. I've been very serious so far. Usually I'm a bit zany and daft, but no. We're all about controlling the map using edging. So where you go to the edge of the screen, it moves. I find this inefficient. And yes, that is the traditional RTS way to control the game. But to be honest, you can do better. For me, I think middle mouse is great. I really love middle mouse control. However, the best players in the community don't use that. If you want to be comfortable but not perfect, I find middle mouse to be the best medium control mechanism because it gives 360 degrees of maneuverability, but unfortunately your cursor hides. So if you go a level up from that, you can use arrow keys, which means your cursor is fully available, which is very important. As we're still on map control, I'm also going to talk about the kind of dexterity of your mouse. So you're going to want to set the DPI of your mouse to be pretty low. The reason you want it low is so you have better control, and that's for all competitive games, to be honest, from FPS to RTS, and that is due to the human mind being better at mapping physical learned abilities. Riding a bike, swimming. If you can make something more physical, a computer game in this sense, you will learn it better, and your knowledge of the environment will be persistent. You'll be able to come back into the game in a year's time, and you'll be a better player than if you'd left it. If you had very little physical control. So that's hotkeys. It's low DPI on your mouse, and it's being as physical as you can with the game. So use all of the keyboard you can, and use the mouse on a low setting. That way, your brain will have a better time of learning the game, and you will find it more natural. It won't ever be like riding a bike or learning to swim, but it'll be slightly better than just using the simple mouse and clicking on the screen all the time. Very small movements in the fingers. It's not going to help you as much. So that brings me on to grid keys really nicely. So in the options, you'll notice that we've got classic hotkeys here. You ain't going to want that. Leave it off. Company Heroes 3 is already confirmed to only use grid keys. Classic keys, by the way, what it does is... I'm going to use it for a second. What it does is... See, mine won't even do it. Mine knows how much I hate it so much that it's... Is that... Right, yeah, there we go. There we go. AST. So, it puts letters of the phrase itself is how you remember. So, in this case, retreat has the word T in, so that's why it's T. Merge is M for merge. So you have to memorize the letters, and that's how it works. It's very inefficient, so as soon as you can in the game, you want to turn off classic hotkeys, go on to grid keys. Grid keys maps the 12 keys on the left side of your keyboard, so it's quer, asdf, and zxkv. And doing that, it also gives you a grid here, 4x3 for those 12 keys, and you can have a quick reference guide at exactly what you need to do. Oh, Urals C, I see it, yes, fantastic. That's great. Oh, I've got that's Z, boom, easy, retreat. Oh, get him back there. It's so much more physical and visual as to what you want to do. Basically the matrix with which you control the game. It's so better laid out, and Company Heroes 3 is already confirmed to rely on this system, so it's best to learn it now. I'm just going to show on screen the overall thing. I've got a mini copy on my other monitor, but I want to show you where we're at so you can keep summarized as to where we are. Next is auto hotkeys. Now, auto hotkeys is a third-party software, and it remaps keys on your keyboard. Company Heroes 2 and 1 do not offer remappable hotkeys. Company Heroes 3 is already confirmed to do so. So, yeah, auto hotkeys is great, and I need to keep clicking Windows key for this. Sorry, guys. But let's go on to this here. This is the Company of Heroes subreddit, our Company of Heroes, and it has a sidebar. I've got loads of guides in there for you guys, and the moderators have added to them over the years. This is one I wrote probably 6 years ago. I last updated it 4 years ago because it's still so relevant. Originally it was based on CoH, and all the community has relied on auto hotkeys all this time to remap their keys. One of the most relied upon key remappings is WASD, which I think actually you have to press shift in order to engage it in this case, which is quite helpful. But yeah, this is one of the most common used hotkey requests because WASD is far better than arrow keys. Two famous players come to mind when I talk about arrow keys. You've got Lovenest, who's a 3-time world champion. I've got all of the kind of top players of all time. You may have seen this already mapped out on the Master League, which is a system I run to monitor the best players. But on the all-time rankings, you'll see here that for CoH2, especially Lovenest is by far the best player ever. He uses classic hotkeys because he's a traditionalist. He also uses the arrow keys on the left side of the board. If you go over to the current system though, Isildur in the end game of coming here is where the players are probably the most efficient they've ever been. He is a huge proponent of WASD. So he remaps his arrow keys to be on the left side of his keyboard, and he presses shift in order to engage them. And then when he's not holding shift down, he can use the hotkeys as normal. It's a bit convoluted, but you can already see in order to get the best out of the control of this game, you yourself are going to have to put a lot of effort into understanding it and finding what works best for you. You can be like the humble AE, that's me, who uses middle mouse. So that's my hotkey script there. I remap space to be middle mouse button because for me, as a caster, it works really well with how I control the map as a caster. So I want smooth movements and I want my mouse to be doing those movements. I also use a lot of tactical map. I did not always do this though, and it's something I've had to bring into my game recently. Before we move on to tactical map, there's one last thing I want to bring up about screen control. So this all links in, it's all practical. But on screen control, I am a big believer in facing your opponents. The best way I can describe this is using the viewfinder here, which is kind of rhombus in shape. It's narrower at your side, it's wider at the top of the screen. I call this your side because this is actually your perspective. If you look at my, sorry, let me show my hand here. It's not top down. It's facing. It's not at a vertical angle. Let me show you in the game. See what I mean? Hang on a second. This would be top down. It's not, is it? It's like that. So there's a wider view pane at the top of your screen. Now you tell me, you already have muscle memory and knowledge of where you are. Do you want to see where your opponent is? Hold down Alt on your keyboard. And a top tip, by the way, is to do it in tactical map. Then you don't mess around as much. It's only one pane of flexibility in tactical map. If you do it elsewhere, it's 300 and, well, probably 360 squared, whatever that is. So yes, do it in tactical map and face your opponents. A lot of people do this naturally anyway from games like Total War. And it's alien in RTS to do it because we're used to the isometric RTSs of the ancient era. Coming Heroes isn't ancient, it's an FPS engine, and that comes into a lot of things from gun battles to tank battles. In this case, the view pane. It's an RTS, it's an FPS engine based game. So that's the Unreal Engine from 2005, heavily modified to be the Essence engine, which is Relic's now proprietary system, but it's still heavily rooted in first-person shooter gaming. And because of that, facing your opponent is so valuable. So as a top tip for screen control is face your opponent. And if you ever want to return to default, it's a double hit backspace. But in my opinion, you're not going to want to. Only ever hit it once if you mess something up, and it'll just kind of return you where you want to be, which is a really nice view pane, and most importantly, facing your opponent. Talking of something I actually didn't have listed, but it's really important that I bloody do. I'm going to actually write it in now. We've got range and fog of war to talk about. And it's a tactic, but I think it's so important to map control from a practical standpoint, then I'm actually going to talk about it now. All of the units in Company of Heroes have different visibilities. That's range. Sorry, it's not range, it's sight. Range is the ability to fire, so this is your range. Stops there, you see. But your field of view and your sight is incredibly important. So he can see as Pioneer, he can fire upon him. A Combat Engineer has a fantastic vision. He's able to see so much of the battlefield. Therefore, they're great to lead assaults with. And this is a tactic. I didn't even intend to come onto tactics quite yet. But for me, it's so entwined with map control and practical skill that it's hard not to mention it right now. Is that all of the sight ranges in the game are very different to the fighting ranges. And it's something to take into account when orientating your effect on the battlefield. Next on our big ass list, just to say where we've come up to, is tactical map. Then we're going to talk, it's going to be a long session today, guys. It's going to be chaptered. Use the chapters in the YouTube video if you want to go off it now, but we're going to talk about the tactical map next. So let's stop freaking people out with that orientation, because I know it's a little bit somewhat controversial in our community, although a lot of big players do utilize it. This is something that nearly all big players utilize next, though. Tactical map is a huge version of the mini-map, and as expressed in Company of Heroes, with infantry and all these units having to capture the map, they often get into engagements which are pretty bloody dangerous, to be honest, on the outskirts of the battlefield. So what could be happening over here is we could have an enemy. So let's go over here, pretend we're over here, right? And we've now got an enemy scout corps attacking us in the south. We see it, we don't like the look of that engagement. Our AT guns are way too far apart, but the only reason we know our AT guns are too far apart to help is because we had the tactical map open. We can judge the distance, we see the danger, we see the threat. You can also access hotkeys within the tactical map, like well, limited hotkeys within the tactical map. We'll come on to that. There are some things it can't do. One of the best things it can do is issue movement commands, issue attack commands, capture commands, and that's all within the tactical map. One thing you should be aware of, and an advanced kind of tip, is you can shift commands in the game. So I've currently issued a capture command and then an attack move command. So I know this is getting complicated, guys, but shift means you can sequence up abilities. I'm sure you know that from other RTSs. So let me hold down shift now. I wasn't actually hitting it there. So now if I let it go, they all go in that triangle. It's not as perfect as you'd like it to be in Company Heroes. In fact, it's inefficient. I'm hoping they improve it for CoH 3. But for stuff like, you know, if we want to plant a mine at the end of that and then retreat, he's going to do it. And it's fantastic. That is shift. It's a great practical way to control the battlefield. So yeah, that shift commands are really useful. He's going to retreat. I'm not hands off. I actually didn't. I don't think I actually queued him up. There we go. I hit T because I thought I was in. There he is. He's retreating automatically. So yeah, there's loads of little top tips you can do there. Attack move is another great one. That's in the kind of standard abilities here. And to be honest, because it becomes in the practical element, I don't consider it a tactic. I actually consider this just part and parcel of controlling the game. So let me go on this, and I'm actually gonna, before we get on to these ones, I want to introduce one that I actually, for some reason I didn't even. So unit controls. Okay, that's really bloody important if you think about it. But unit controls aren't just right click move here, right click go kind of behind cover. There's a lot more to it than that. There's a lot of finicky little skills that you're going to need to learn, and they're all practical. So right now is going to be everyone I can think of that's going to help you along your way. It's also going to take tactical map into account, and I can't believe I nearly didn't talk about this in this seminar. So right clicking behind cover is very good. When it's a big block of cover like this, it's going to be very useful for fighting. If you didn't know, heavy cover, the green one, is reduced damage and reduced received accuracy. The light cover is just reduced received accuracy, so shots are less likely to kill and maim your soldiers. There's a problem in Company Heroes though, and that problem is vaulting. It's not revolting, it's just vaulting. So if I click on cover sometimes, it will want the unit to jump over it. So how you stop that, drag select the cover, and that removes the option of vaulting. And it's a top tip that I learned from a YouTuber called Tightrope, and it's just one of those things that help you in the game so much. Another movement command that is a little bit beyond the very basics in the game is attack move. Attack move, Q on the keyboard there, means as soon as they see an opponent, let's put them one there for them. Okay, there was already one there. Yeah, opponent, enemy. So as soon as we see him, we're going to start fighting, which means we're not going to get hit. Imagine if we just moved. If we just move, we're not standing still, we're incurring more damage, and we've got less time to think. So attack move means if you fight at maximum range, it gives you more chance to think about what you're doing. So let's try that again. Right, so this time I'm on attack move, I'm somewhere else on the map. I'm here, I'm looking at the unit cards, which is the next thing I'm going to talk about. Probably going to even talk about them. There's so much to talk about today. But they're fighting at distance, I've got more time to think. I can think, oh, I can see there's a scout car there. I don't want to fight. I'm going to soft retreat away. So there's two ways to get out of a battle. There's the soft retreat, which means I backpedal away from a situation, just meaning get out of there. Or I really get out of there. I, evacuate. I hit retreat and I get back to base. So upon evaluating a poor situation, I have two options. I can soft retreat or hard retreat. An attack move is so vital to that. So if you can, issue a lot more attack moves than you do normal movement orders. Next on my list is halt. We're going left to right here. Halt is so bloody important in this game. Halt means that your unit stops still as soon as they bloody can do. And that means that their accuracy improves dramatically. All of the accuracy in this game is heavily dependent on their state of movement. If they're in a state of movement, basically, they're a lot less accurate. I'm going to show you this right now. We're going to attack these units. We're going to focus fire this pioneer whilst on the move. Not much is going to happen. However, we need to halt order now, and the accuracy will improve, and I will kill them. There you go. That's the advantage of halting. It's so important to the game. It applies to infantry. It applies to tanks. Whatever you want it to do. And the next thing we're going to show you is we know where the scout car is, right? Well, hopefully we can fire through this object, because otherwise it won't help. Can't quite fire through it, but we can certainly... There he goes, attack ground. So you can fire through objects, some limited trees, with attack ground. You can place your shots with supreme accuracy. Unfortunately, this object here is what's known as a shot blocker. There is a tree line... Ah, we did kill him in the end, very good. But you see here, this you can fire through because this is a low hedge, and the map designer has made it so you can fire through it. So that's attack ground, very vital. You can do it with mortars for better shot placement rather than just using the barrage. You see how much more accurate this is going to be. Watch the first shot of the mortar now. As soon as he can. Much better than if we just used the barrage blade. So yeah, we've worked our way along this here. We also have, instead of next on the retreat on the command grid, is retreat for infantry, but for tanks it's reverse. Now tanks reversing is very important in Company Heroes because usually in a 1 vs 1 you're against your opponent, you're fighting in one direction, so the ability to reverse means you don't have to turn around. Not turning around, you're keeping your superior frontal armour facing your opponent. So reversing is something that you want to do with anything that can do it. Anti-tank guns can reverse. When an anti-tank gun reverses, its shield faces the opponent, meaning some of these crew members are going to benefit from it and they're not going to get shot to death. Primarily the ones pulling the anti-tank gun, which means it can keep moving without those particular squad members dying. So reverse is very important. There are some other ones that are very important as well, especially on light tanks, but you're just going to want to learn what they all do. You've got hold fire. This is good if you have a large vehicle that fires one big shot and then has a long reload time. So for example, as Soviets, I mean, immediately what comes to mind is an IS-2. Watch its reload time. It's very slow. It's around 3 seconds maybe even 4 seconds. There we go. So what you want to do is put it on hold fire and manually place your shots. This applies to low levels of the game just as much as higher, because if you're playing in a casual team-based game, you can just point and click adventure your way to victory. Hold fire, and if you're in a vehicle battle, you're going to want to prioritize vehicles. Now, anti-tank guns start the game with prioritized vehicles because there's very little likelihood they're going to want to prioritize infantry, and that is because the profile of their weapon is not very good against infantry. Explosive shells have two types of damage. They have penetrative armor-based damage, or they have AOE, area of effect explosive damage. So all of the explosives are tuned for their profile in this game, and that's something. Another thing, there's so much to talk about in this game, and that's just something we're gonna think about. I'm just going to add it now, actually. Weapon profiles. Can't believe I almost didn't discuss weapons profiles. So I'm just adding that now to upgrades here. It's the only place I can add it without deleting everything. But we've gotten through unit controls there. Very important. Next, not just screen visual control, but sound is so important to Company Heroes. And the reason you can guess is just in so many games, because it's a 3D audio environment, you can echolocate your opponent's activity. And that is one of the reasons I also like to face the opponent and have left and right channels kind of in the orientation, but it helps regardless. Probably wanted to stop that mortar firing a while ago. But say we're up against the OKW here. Say we're up against the OKW. Say all of these infantry are marching down here. Say we don't have these vehicles. And say we're a little bit scared that the OKW opponent is using a Goliath tracked mine, okay? Before you have to suffer the penalty of seeing this mine, I really don't want the anti-tank gun in this. You can hear the mine. It has a very distinctive engine noise. So say we're just... Oh, I'm just issuing this command and I hear something. I can hear something right there. It's not here. It's not over here. It's definitely here. And that's because I've got a very good headset on my ears right now, and I'm able to figure out that there could be a Goliath in the vicinity. So instead, I take a wide berth and I can see it, and I know it's there now. So I do what any good Soviet leader would do in the Second World War, is I order my units to attack it in a head-on collision, because that can possibly not go wrong in the slightest. Kill that mine, guys. Make it suffer. There we go. Unfortunately, we may have lost some soldiers in that battle, but we got rid of the mine. Very good. That wouldn't be very good for our main resource, which of course is manpower control. That sound, it works so much more than just that as well. You can hear when vehicles are coming. Especially tanks. Tanks are so loud in the fog of war. Fog of war, of course, being something so vital to controlling ranges, important sight ranges, as we've already talked about. But if you can hear where an enemy tank is before it's there, I mean, just listen to this. That's the same. You can hear it so well in the fog of war. You already know, if you're here on the map, you can hear the enemy is moving down here. And that is why playing with a good headphones is so important to the game. Next on our list, after sound, is micro and then endurance. Now, in order to show you micro, I think I'm going to have to somehow probably start again, actually. Let's start again. And I am going to talk about the ability to control the game at a detailed individualistic level, and then talk about endurance, because it's very tiring to keep up with the game at that level. And that is why tactical map is so important to micro as well, and endurance. It all ties in. So I know I kind of glossed over tactical map, but it all comes into one now. Tactical map is the ability to see everything on the field at once. We've already discussed this, yes? Micro is the small movements constantly needed to be issued to the squads. We've also got these unit portraits in the top right here. So they are, it's kind of the holy trinity. It all comes together to help you control the battlefield. You have tactical map where you can decide your options here. Within the game screen, you also have the ability to see what you have at your disposal in the top right of the screen. So it blends it together on the tactical map, giving you what is essentially in the top right corner, but on the battlefield itself. You can then issue small commands much more quickly. Double clicking on the infantry section is in the infantry is a fantastic point. It allows you to pan the camera exactly to where that squad is. Micro mechanics mostly come down to the use of cover and on a practical level, the use of cover at an early stage. Not just issuing commands to your infantry. Anyone can do that. You can do that in tactical map by clicking on the points using shift commands, but the ability to react quickly to a threat and issue command for them to go behind cover, as a drag command, as I described earlier, is a very obvious example of micro mechanics, and it's very draining. And that is why, in terms of endurance, in order to give yourself a fighting chance, you don't want to tire yourself out. You want to give yourself as few movement commands around the screen. Use tactical map to reduce your stress and to reduce the amount of micro mechanics you have to issue. If you can do something within this one screen, it helps so much. So say this guy incurs death now. Say we've got a few squad members that have died here. So what we're going to want to do is fighting abilities. Say there's a lot more enemies than this, of course. Get him back to base. We'll also do the same to this guy. And I'm going to show you exactly what I mean, what I'm getting at in a second. Right. So we're fighting over here. We're trying to get this combat engineer to lay a mine. And we've realised that our retreat has finished in base. Instead of going all the way to base, or it'd be much quicker to click on base and individually reinforce, there are several ways we can now improve our endurance and improve our efficiency. You go to tactical map, you drag select the units. You can't reinforce them in this screen, but what you can do is once you've drag selected them, hit the F button or reinforce. Because they're drag selected, every squad here is now reinforcing, costing 20 manpower per soldier. And they'll all be ready soon, but I have not had to leave the theatre of combat. And the reason I've done that is because I've used tactical map to improve my micro mechanics and to improve my endurance. This has been a lot less stressful for me now. I know I mass retreated a few squads. I know they're ready now because I can see they're ready. I can also then, next tip, get your paper and pen ready, tab through them, tab through the selection to issue the commands to where I need them to go. Because when they get back to base, they group up. Then I want them to spread out again and assault the battlefield. So using that selection, you can tab through and do it that way. When they're then separated, you can see the situation on the TAC map so well. You can then issue commands very quickly. Double click on them if you want to see what they're dealing with on an individual level. This guy needs to be helped out, so using the abilities in the game, you can then issue micro. See what I did there? That was an error. That's because I didn't drag select the cover. That is me not practicing what I'm preaching clearly. So anyway, that's micro mechanics. There's a lot more tips I'm going to point out in this seminar, but that is a very clear example of how tactical map, the unit portraits in the top right, how it all comes together to help your endurance. These three things are coexisting, to be honest. In order to be good at the game, you have to give yourself the best fighting chance. You have to clear down how difficult the game is to play by putting yourself in a great tactical position, and we'll come on to tactics properly later, but by making it as easy for yourself as you possibly can. So that, to recap on this huge section, find the best way to control the screen. Use the hotkeys. If you need to, remap hotkeys that are vital to you. For example, I have tactical map rebound to there it is. So numpad 0, which is the tactical map button, I have it remapped to tilde, which is the key in the top left of your keyboard. You can also use tab, which is another popular option, and that just allows me to very quickly, whilst I'm fighting, definitely not going to save that now because I've just knackered it up. Whilst I'm fighting, I can very quickly tab around, issue commands, lose against easy AI with an immense amount of efficiency. But what I'm saying is, yes, this entire pillar is so interwoven, and it all adds up. In practical, it all comes down to experience as well. But before you start to build up that experience and get game hours, you want to give yourself the best setup you can. Do your research. So, yes, we've done the practical tier, and I now want to discuss how you can do your research, which then feeds into strategy. Before I do that, I'm going to take a quick water break. I'll be right back with you. Thank you. And we're back. That was a very literal water break, as you can see, but I did actually drink water as well. Recap, we've gone through all the basics I can give you right now. The best application of this will come later in when we watch actual games. But next we're going to talk about research you can do from other resources. So let's get Google Chrome open. I've got a few things prepared for you already. Let's have a quick say hello to Twitch chat. They're all here, every single one of them. I think I've got this screen which hides. Yeah, that's a bit cleaner. There we go. So, hey, that's him. They're all there. Welcome, guys. So I'm doing this live on Twitch because I find it easier to export straight to YouTube. My face is much too big on this screen. Let's go back to this one. It's fine. Yeah, I have Matt weight loss as a spreadsheet. It's the only embarrassing thing I can think. Didn't go too well, that one. I haven't updated that spreadsheet for a year. Anyway. Company Heroes has a Reddit. We've already discussed that, but what it also has is a fan site. Now, this fan site has guides in the top right, and yeah, there's some decent beginner guides there that talk about some of the same concepts I have today. But the best two things it has is the ability guide, which actually tells you what all of these abilities really do. So it fleshes out that knowledge in the game that isn't there. The actual stats, for God's sake. We've also got that for the veterancy guide, for the veterancy in the game, giving you the actual benefits of each one. So earlier, I believe we talked about the T70. Well, this is what those bonuses actually are. And as you can see, they're a lot more in depth on this guide. So they're two fantastic guides you can use. And then if you notice in the research pillar, I also talk about videos and live streams. Now, Company Heroes, co2.org, or soon to be renamed, it seems. It's got a great array of streams you can watch. And the players such as Orange Pest, who are, let's say hello for YouTube purposes. Hello, Orange Pest, you're on my guide now. There we go. So Orange Pest is on my guide. This is a top level player playing with a hell of a lot of ability, experience, and skill. And he's listening to heavy metal music. There we go. But he's playing against a fellow top level player. He's on the guide, and that's one of the best ways you can learn, by watching the pros. You can see he's got core infantry utilized, the lieutenant, the utility car there, and yeah, it's very, very good to watch top level players. Also, you can go on my YouTube channel, which you're already on, I know, but you can go and check out a lot of the I'm sure. I don't think I've got any embarrassing YouTube videos I watch. No, it's just eating videos and boxing. Okay, I never know with these things though. So my videos. Here we go. And I've got a lot of playlists of all the best tournaments ever. In my opinion, at least. I mean, of course, I'm going to say that, aren't I? And I've got it linked on my Twitch channel. But when I do big tournaments, it's a different. It's all hands on deck. We do our best we can to present the best players in the world playing. I've done a heck ton of tournaments, and some of the play you'll see there will inspire you. It'll excite you, and it'll also teach you how to play the game. There's no better way than watching the best people in the world at something, because masters have perfected an art, and it is applicable to every level. Every level. So that's you doing your research. You've got guides to read. You've got one fellow YouTuber I will recommend is Tightrope. There's not many other people I'd ever recommend. Tightrope, however, he does very similar to casting to me, where he casts the top level of the game, but he also does tips and tricks videos which teach you a lot of the stuff that, to be honest, I learned a lot of this stuff from him. So go and check out his channel also. His tips and tricks series is fantastic. Next, let's talk strategy. Let's go into the game. Let's quit this match and let's talk strategy. That is our sixth pillar today now. Strategy is so important to RTS, for God's sake. Yes, tactics are vital to win a fight, but strategies win wars. And map knowledge and vetoes and setting yourself up before you even enter a game is so important. So, say that we are Wehrmacht, okay? Say that we're going to enter an auto match game as Wehrmacht. Every faction has benefits, weaknesses, and strengths. Wehrmacht have the best support weapons in the game. That's the heavy machine gun, the MG42. I said earlier it was the backbone of their army. That's why it's available at tier 0. And that's very, very true. They fight best on open maps like Amelie Fields, Longraskaya, Bayo, Crossing in the Woods, and Crossroads. Maybe, yeah, they're the main ones. So as Wehrmacht, if you are doing your vetoes, you do not want to play on Holodny Firma. It's a very claustrophobic map relatively. Ploiest, you don't want to play on. Crossroads Winter is just a personal taste thing. And yeah, you want to get rid of any close quarter combat maps. You want to stick to big, wide open areas, because every map is different, and having map knowledge is so vital to the game. Let's go on to a picture of a map here. This is Crossroads. It's the most famous map in 1 vs 1. You can see here, if we were to annotate it, it's got garrison there, a garrison, that's a name for a building, and hedgerow here, hedgerows there rather. So that's the impassability, and then hedgerow here, here, here. Okay, so they're the largely impassable areas, and that means that your fighting area to control the fuel, so we'll now change colour to what you want to get. This is a goal, is in yellow. The fuels are here, the victory points here. So they're the things you want. You can immediately see that if your Wehrmacht is, let's say this guy is a support weapon player, you're going to want to control the big, so blue is control, it's your colour. There we go, blue. You're going to want to control an area of the battlefield with your machine guns and your anti-tank guns. You're going to want to develop a strategy. Wehrmacht here could possibly control this big open field, giving them access to the fuel victory point, exert pressure here onto that victory point. But it might be best as the south player to control this area here, because that kind of means they don't have to cross this. And when I say this, what I'm saying there, that is difficult to control, because it's what it's got. It's all hinged on this point here. There is an equivalent there, but that might be easier to protect due to the hedgerows, maybe this garrison, maybe. It just, there's two ways you could play the map, and you just have to find the best way for you. One thing we didn't talk about earlier is cutoffs are a huge mechanic in Company of Heroes. You can see here that if this point is taken, it stops this point here being connected to your base. So you have to take things into account with your defense. If you're a defensive faction like Wehrmacht, you might want to set your machine gun so it's facing this way. So you're stopping threats from this direction. That's not the best way to show a threat. Stopping threats coming from, that's definitely not it either. Anyway, you might want to set up like that. But understanding the map and how it plays and taking into account of the determinant factors is so bloody important. I wish I found a higher res picture as well. But anyway, so your vetoes are important, setting you up to play the game, and understanding how the maps play out is very important as well. To further go into that, I'm now then going to talk about build order as well. So let's start another game, shall we? And let's pick another map that we could consider our build order on. So going through the 1 versus 1 maps here, let's go for a little bit of Mill Road. Mill Road's a very popular map, but it's actually a bit allied favoured against Wehrmacht, because Wehrmacht are so defensive orientated. Mill Road is a very fast paced map. It's the range from base to base is quite short, and also the kind of spread of the map is a little bit better for allies in terms of shot blockers and sight blockers. What I mean by sight blocker is what I'm going to show you next. So let me just disable the AI a moment. And let me keep the, we'll keep the fog of war off. And we're going to keep it in default, although actually, because you may have never seen this map before, I'm going to recommend you rotate map. So I'm going to rotate map because I want to show you good practice. And I am very, very sure that is good practice, by the way. I won't back down from that if anybody in the community wants to tell me otherwise. I think that we haven't hit our most efficient way to play yet, and I definitely think that this will form part of it. So, as you can see, what I mean by that is there's huge sight blockers, meaning a machine gun can't easily set up and control the map as well as they want. These sight blockers kind of mean that the map is slightly less easy to play for the Wehrmacht. And the allies, who most commonly rely on flanking, that's a lot of infantry use, they find it easier to thwart Wehrmacht. Also, Mill Road, in terms of structure, it has aggressive cutoffs. What I mean by aggressive is if you get round your enemy's back lines, you can cap them in quite a shielded fashion. So this here is the cutoff, because it goes all the way down here and it stops the fuel. So that is the fuel cutoff, because it denies fuel from your enemy if you take it. And you can see how deep it is, and usually a deep cutoff would be safe. On Mill Road, however, due to the sight blockers, you can flank. Say we're doing it to the enemy this time, you can flank all the way around the sight blockers, get to the cutoff, and the enemy's defensive line in yellow has been navigated. We've gotten around it, we've taken the cutoff, and although they were trying to defend their fuel, they've now been denied it. And that's why Mill Road is a very tricky map to play. So we have to have a defined strategy of how we're going to play and what build order we're going to use. So, first of all, let's get rid of all that crap and let's play as though we're playing the game. Oh, we're not playing Garden Lawn Simulator. So first of all, we're going to make an infantry company. We've built an MG. The timing would obviously usually be around 1 minute for all of this stuff, but yes, we're going to build up a strategy to control the map. Usually, you're going to want to get grenadiers. Okay, grenadiers are the backbone infantry. Sorry, MG's my pod. MG is the backbone. We would never play the MG like that, of course. So let's pretend we've just started. We've finished this now. The MG's been capping the cutoff. We can now build a few grenadiers. So tactics-wise, always keep your MG and your Pioneers together, because Pioneers have the vision for the MG and they can spot danger. But we want to talk about map order and strategy. Assessing this situation, we're going to want to exert pressure on these 2 victory points because they're closest to the fuel. I'm just going to have a break a second. Somebody's knocking on the door. Hang on a second. Sorry, here we go. We're back. So controlling the map and having a strategy for the map is vitally important. You've got this fuel here, which you're going to want to protect somehow. You're going to want to keep this cut off, and you're going to want to exert pressure on 2 victory points, because 2 of 3 would mean your opponent's victory point meter will tick down, of course. So my advice on playing Wehrmacht in this map is this open area here is key to success. You can always swing down and exert pressure on the munitions, yes. This victory point is hard to keep on this map, and this would come in with experience because it has a garrison right next to it. And although, of course, you'd have the enemy's fuel and you'd not be contesting it enough, as Wehrmacht, they tend to be a late game orientated faction. So having your area, including your fuel, and exerting pressure on 2 victory points would be a very good way to go indeed. So let's have a little look visually what I mean now by that area. This is what I was discussing here. There's the central victory point. There's the western victory point. There's my fuel. This area of operation is absolutely key to success. So if I'm going to set my machine gun up, I'm going to want to keep it somewhere down here. I'm also going to want to exert pressure on these points more often than I do these in the south, because if I forsake my prepared position means a defensive orientated strategy, I'm not going to be giving it the support it requires. So that is strategy in a nutshell in terms of map. Build order comes next. Build order is exactly what I've started to do here. You never float this much manpower, of course, and you always issue commands to your units, so you can appreciate I'm trying to do a guide here. But build order is something we've already touched upon. You want to make sure your core combatants are orientated to compete. And if they're not set up in the right way, you're not going to have a good day, basically. So 3 Grenadiers would be great for this. It's a mobile map, so then you're going to want to possibly go for a scout car, a light armoured car, in order to start scouting for your opponents and also inflicting damage at an early stage. So yes, you can really see how a build order and how understanding the game, doing your research on your how players play each map, watching live streams and watching casted games of top players is going to be so key to developing your build orders. Experimentation works, yes, especially in the lower ranks where people haven't begun to master the game. But if you can have a semblance of wanting to learn and wanting to get better and wanting to play well from the get-go, you will set yourself up for continued success in the long run. Next, in terms of strategy is, to be honest, something that I've already touched upon a little bit already. That is the idea of pressure and control. If we're exerting pressure and control on our opponent, I actually feel like I've covered this enough already without having to go into it any further. Pressure and control is controlling the map. It's exerting the pressure. Company of Heroes at a high level or at any level is a delicate balance of what pressure you apply on your opponent versus what they apply on you, the mix of your units and abilities, and how they co-align with your opponents and co-align with your own units, and how your opponent matches up against that. And that is why effective counter strategy is so important. And situationally in a game, having the right composition is so bloody vital. I mean, we can go through, we can go to YouTube here, and instead of having a game against no AI open, which really isn't that helpful, is it? Let's go up on any random YouTube video of, we'll pick one of mine, and we'll pick one game in which we can analyze the build orders of the players and try and figure out if they had the right thing at that point in time. So let's go on PFC versus Asherblar, 2 fantastic Korean players. And let's go into the late game and analyse what they did and what units they had composed at this time. So, we just go on. We'll keep it on mute, and I'm sure it'll show us what we need to see. I think that one's about to end soon, so we'll have it about here. Right, let it go off. Top left of your screen, PFC. He's got lots of core infantry, 1 tank destroyer, and a machine gun. That isn't actually helping him as much as he would like right now. He's currently losing this game. The reason is he's not deployed a good enough map strategy, and we found that in this game he actually really struggled with his map strategy. He had 2 tank destroyers in the end, that's right. 2 tank destroyers, a anti-tank gun. I'm going to press play so you can see it better. 4 infantry squads and a machine gun. It's great, yes, but look at the anti-infantry prowess of the army in red. He has a sniper, some anti-tank Panzer Grenadiers with an anti-tank rocket launcher, the Panzer Schreck. He has mobile Grenadiers that don't have a light machine gun. They have scoped rifles, meaning they are just very good on the move for some reason. 3 machine guns, and now finally he gets a heavy tank. He gets the Tiger. Now the Tiger usually against 2 tank destroyers and an anti-tank gun would be in a really tricky spot, but because Ashablar has such a better infantry composition, with the sniper having exerted fantastic manpower attrition on his opponent in an uncountered fashion, there's been no real. Usually, I mean, the Americans can go for perhaps they could go for a pack howitzer, which is an indirect weapon. They could go for a mortar to smoke the sniper out. And he actually quits here. Well, he loses victory points due to his lack of control. He has a very strong army at a lot of stages in this game, but he just gets it wrong in the infantry unit build order composition standpoint. And that is this series doesn't go this way, but he loses this one game of the series, and it's because he got it so wrong in terms of build order and strategy. And it's a perfect example of that. So having good counters to what your opponent builds and a good idea comes through experience, but you can give yourself a real good leg up if you do your research before you start playing. If you've got an idea of what counters what and what you should do in a situation, you don't have to suffer for 50 minutes at a time in losing games if you've done the work in. If you put the hours in understanding what can counter. Wow. We've done some tactics already. I couldn't help myself. It's so entwined in the game already. We've covered cover and retreating already, haven't we? Defense and support, attacking and flanking. They're really vital points, to be quite frank. So we've talked about defense already. Defense is the idea of a prepared position and kind of protecting what you have. It's defensive in its nature. So here I'm going to put an anti-tank mine down on the right side of my prepared position. I'm going to want some anti-tank guns, as we've already discussed. So that, of course, is a team weapon. And I might even want 2 of them. That's currently in vogue. And now I have to play defensively. I'm going to use a lot of tactical maps to be situationally aware. I'm going to keep good pressure down on the central of Richmond. Before I get there, tactically, I'm going to want to survey the situation first. I'm going to want to push in with a minesweeper. Wait for it to upgrade. It would be a bit better. Pretend it's upgraded. And I'm going to want to survey the situation. Make sure there's no machine guns here. I'm clear to go. I'm going to cap with this unit. He will provide covering fire. The Grenadier will be the covering fire. All of this is tactical. Now that I can be sure that there's nothing there, I'm going to pull the machine gun further forward because he is safe to do so. This is playing defensively. Let's be the opponent. You can do this here. We're going to take over the easy AI. Because I like to play against the opponent, I am going to play from south. And because I am gosh, well, I'm also Wehrmacht. That's a bit unfortunate. I'm going to pretend I'm Americans. I'm going to have German voice lines, but as the Americans. So let's give myself a good core infantry composition for the Americans. That's 3 rifles, a lieutenant, and a Stuart. Can you see Stuart there? Is it a tank? Of course it's a tank. So then, rifles. How would they be aggressive? What tactics would they deploy to be aggressive? Well, they've got a few options available to them. Usually, I mean, you would have access to smoke with smoke grenades, but I'm not going to be able to do that. Instead, I'm going to give myself a smoke ability from a commander here. So I can show you just use of smoke a little bit. So, because the riflemen are best on the move, their power is on the move accuracy. They're one of the best on the move units. You're going to want to be aggressive. The entire faction is based around being aggressive. So, in order to, I know that the opponent's got a prepared position around here, and I want to attack them. I'm going to separate out my units in case I run into a machine gun, because I don't want to just get countered immediately. So I'm not going to give the game away at this point. I'm going to keep spreading them out, and I'm going to try and converge upon the opponent. So it's separate and converge. So here we go. We timed it so roughly they're entering the battlefield at the same time. We've got an engagement here. We want to be behind heavy cover. I've got riflemen coming into the situation here. I see that Grenadier. The Grenadier has access to a Panzerfaust. He could give me a damaged engine, which I don't want to happen. I'm getting smoked out there, so I unleash smoke. I'm still in a decent position against that Grenadier. I have to keep an eye on it now, though. They're down to 2 men. I've taken the Grenadier because I used the Stuart light tank. However, now there's pack 40s, so I reverse behind the garrison. I protect my tank, stop it from dying. The lieutenant clears up the anti-tank guns. I forgot to retreat that Grenadier, but all of it's tactical. And that's why it's harder to be aggressive in Company of Heroes than it is to be defensive. Being defensive, that's, by the way, a winning assault. Get out of there whilst you still can. I talked about a lot there, but to recap, I split my forces up. I made mental notes of things I had to do in order for it to be successful. As soon as I saw a Grenadier on the left side, I did not just stick with my assault. I dropped that rifleman out of the attack. He then became a heavy cover rifleman until he has to retreat. He's then keeping that Grenadier in position, keeping that Grenadier's Panzerfaust away from my Stuart light tank as an example. The main body of the assault ran into issues. Usually when pinned by a machine gun, I would have retreated. In this case, I dropped a smoke, off-map smoke ability. I kept them in the fight. That distraction rendered my opponent incapable of assessing the damage my Stuart was dealing to his Grenadier, allowing me to kill the Grenadier squad. The overall attack overwhelmed my opponent, and it basically meant that I was able to get from it more than he did. I got from that attack more than my opponent did, and that is a very important concept in Company of Heroes play. Being aggressive is about pushing your opponent's defense until it breaks down, and then stealing a kill or stealing a level of control. You don't always hope to destroy your opponent with every attack. Sometimes it's about just trading upwards. Famously, grenades are great at this. If you go in for a flank with multiple squads and they have grenades available, that means that your assault is much more likely to end up victorious if you throw multiple grenades. So you can see on the pillars of tactics here, if we go back to the tactics screen here, defense is one method of play. Defense and support, using your support weapons to defend you. They use mines primarily, so they're very linked. Attacking and flanking, very linked to grenade play. So it's all about, as you say, like either swarm or you defend, and it's all about pushing your opponent and exerting that very important pressure. Pressure, under pressure, comes into the game so bloody much. And the two main modes of play are perfect examples of that. You've got defense and support, and attacking and flanking, both of which use two primary abilities, mines and grenades. You then also have garrisons and the clearance of garrisons. Garrisons are buildings, and especially at low levels of play, because the maps have been tuned over time, garrisons are vitally important. So, this here is a garrison, and I have a problem. My problem is that this infantry squad is, for one, an enemy squad. So let's make him an enemy. There we go. Oh. Anyway, he's in the garrison. That's my problem. You have problems in getting people out of garrisons because they're incredibly well defended. The damage that this grenadier will do to this squad is so low because it's basically heavy cover. If you look within the garrison, you can see the situation here. They're defended very well. And also, this building is very good because it has 3 windows facing the opponent, you see? 3 windows. Very dangerous to fight up against. One way that they could make it better for themselves is if they assaulted it from one side, from behind heavy cover, they would only be up against 2 windows. Let's try that again. This time, what they're up against is a lot less dangerous. It's 2 rifles versus a possible 3. So garrisons, you have to take into account the windows in the garrison and how many on each side. Not doing very well there, are we? Let's not assault this with a grenadier, though. Let's instead assault this with a combat engineer of the Soviets. So we're flipping around a lot, but there's a grenadier inside there, so I want to stay on topic. And let's give him an upgrade, shall we? Oh, that poor grenadier's dead, so let's give him an upgrade. Oh, he's getting machine gun. But basically, flamethrowers nuke stuff inside here. Just trust me, flamethrowers get rid of anything in a garrison. And if you don't have access to flamethrowers, your best shot is indirect fire versus garrisons. Company Heroes 3 will have anti-breaching mechanic. Will have breaching mechanics, which is the anti-garrison clearance tool of the next game. But in this game, it's all about flamethrower usage for Wehrmacht, and for Soviets, it's about incendiary grenades for OKW. For the USF, it's about just using the raw power of consolidated force. So group up your infantry, maybe lob a grenade here or there, and if you've got time, you can get mortars and pack howitzers, which really do great work against garrisons. So indirect fire is a good tool too. So you'll find that through the tactics of play and experience. Garrisons can be a hard point of contention, and they can really make you suffer. This one is watching over a victory point and a fuel, so it often gets heavy use, and that is why you've really got to consider your approach on it. And I would consider grouping up multiple squads behind that heavy cover and facing one side if you don't have access to a flamethrower. So it's about being situational with your assault as well. So yeah, garrisons, fortunately on most maps, are now heavily limited in how much they affect the map. And if they do affect the map, there's always tools you can utilize to clear them and get them out of there. That's garrisons and clearance. Next, we're going to talk about upgrades and weapons profiles. If we have enough time, we need to do some bloody capping, to be honest, especially as this plays. So let's go and do that next. Weapons profiles are very important. This squad here is a combat engineer. However, this one is a pioneer. You will notice on the pioneers, they have MP40s. MP40s are close quarter combat specialist units. They're pretty bloody awful against combat engineers, as an example. I was hoping to beat this squad and cap that victory point. Maybe I'll just cap this one instead. That'll probably be easier. There we go. So yes, let's change owner of the Pioneer, and we'll see that at distance I'm okay with the combat engineers, especially from behind cover. In fact, I'm most likely going to win this fight. But if I choose to close the distance against a close quarter combat specialist, not only is my on-the-move accuracy suffering a penalty, when I get within the weapons profile advantage for a submachine gun, I begin to suffer a lot more damage. And in fact, I now lose this battle because I made poor use of game knowledge and understanding of how the weapons work. So if I'd kept at distance, I likely would have won that battle. And that is how much all of these things affect things. So these guys have carbine rifles. It's kind of a middle distance weapon. You can see that here. My riflemen, although yes, great on the move and middle distance rifles, they were able to steal that light machine gun from the Grenadiers earlier on, meaning that now their long distance weapons profile is fantastic. Best way to learn this is through game experience and an understanding of how weapons work in war, because the game roughly follows those parameters. Light machine guns are great at long distance, rifles middle, submachine guns close. It's pretty much that simple. And then all of the tanks have different ranges and different profiles. Also their penetrative profiles, which is something I nearly forgot to talk about, but I suppose it's coming next because I have vehicle micro listed next. It is very important that you take into account the armor quality of your vehicle. So as I mentioned earlier with the reverse, most vehicle micro comes down to the ability to get in without being snared. Snared is a little bit of a strange term. It actually kind of means like you get snared like you snare an animal, but in this case you just get your engine damaged. So a damaged engine on a vehicle, it's not what you want. So it's combat. I'm not going to be able to find it now. Whenever I'm doing anything like this and I want to find like how to damage an engine or something, I always fail. As soon as I stop doing something like this, it's so easy. But a damaged engine vehicle is very, very slow moving. So vehicle micro in that sense, if I'm coming up against an enemy grenadier, such as this here, I've gotten much too close there. In a competitive game right now, they would use their Panzerfaust ability and my Stuart light tank would die. So the way to play with a vehicle in this sense of tank is to learn to attack move, and then he won't get too close. He'll fire as soon as he's available to. Oh no, it's not. It's sorry, he's not going to attack move because that's not an enemy combatant, of course. Silly me. Anyway, let's do that again, shall we? Let's make it an enemy. And let's attack move him this time. There you go. He's keeping at distance. I've now seen the threat, and I can keep at distance myself. If he advances on me and tries to use the Panzerfaust ability, I can do that. I can also then, if he goes behind a bush, I can't see him, I can attack ground, and all of this is vehicle micro. The next thing to worry about with vehicles is how they drive. So if I saw Panzer, if I saw that these packs were here, you have to evade them. But if I clipped that building, I would get stuck. Okay, so you have to take into account the turning circle of your tank. So now if I want to get past the building, it gets stuck, much more likely to be hit by the anti-tank guns. And if it's a bigger tank like a Panzer IV or a Sherman, it might get stuck and then stop turning on the spot. So you have to give things a wider berth than the kind of distance of the building itself. So yeah, it's very important that you do that and you give enough room for manoeuvre. And reversing is often so much quicker than getting out of there. So anti-tank guns are a big danger. With vehicle micro, you've also got to watch out for mines because they give them the damaged engine state and experience. But using these little white dotted lines is very important to understanding what's happening. So you see here, it can't turn as well as you want to because there's a flag in the way, and that's meaning he's more vulnerable than he should be. So that's vehicle micro in a nutshell. We've already addressed smoke and indirect fire, to be honest. I know that's on my list, but I was just jotting down everything I needed to, and it's already come into the picture. But smoke is fantastic. If you've got a difficult to capture victory point or machine gun setup from a defensive player, it's the anti-defense tool. It really does help with attacking and flanking, and that's why the United States forces have a lot of options for smoke. OKW have good smoke options, Wehrmacht have limited, and Soviet have limited, mostly from the mortars. But yeah, smoke is a big part of the game, and it's something, an added value option. Indirect fire, again, as we mentioned earlier, is a specialist tool, and it does have situational advantages. In team games especially, it's very advantageous, and the current meta in 1 versus 1 is that if you build, for example, a heavy panzer corps as Wehrmacht, you have access to a weapon such as the Panzerwerfer. Now the Panzerwerfer is a multiple rocket launcher system, and that is an anti-support weapon system. It's expensive, it comes late in the game, it's ultimate in taking out team weapons. So that's the biggest actual current use of indirect fire in 1 versus 1 at the moment. Mortars do see limited use, and they are always useful, but it's the manpower they cost and the kind of the early game when they're used that there's often better options and better ways to have an effect on the game if you want to truly master that game. Next, we're going to talk about dirty tactics. You may have already seen the option to fire behind bushes. I'm going to talk about 3 dirty tactics just to make you aware of the psychological games of warfare and how they can work. A lot of them revolve around grenades, and we're going to give myself infinite resources and battle phase 1. There we go. Let's make sure that speed ups are all. There we go. So we have the option here. Say if there's an enemy behind this bush, we can attack them without them knowing them there. Say we had a squad in this building here. Let's give it a copy paste. We can see behind this bush. We know what's there. So if there's an enemy squad here, say a Soviet conscript squad, which is definitely an enemy, we know it's there, but he doesn't know that my squad is there. So what we can do in this position is a dirty tactic. We can fire a rifle grenade over the hedgerow and do significant damage to that squad without him knowing it was going to happen. Say we then force the enemy to retreat. We can do things like, and this is just for your awareness, you pick this up by watching the pros play, to be quite frank. Say we have infantry section, we have 2 assault grenadier squads in the back lines. We've seen this battle unfolding. We know he's going to want to retreat eventually. We would then position squads on the retreat path, and as soon as the retreat is, there's an option to make that happen, I know it. Anyway, as soon as he retreats, we're there, we're waiting, and we could throw grenades on the retreat path, and he'd be absolutely screwed. I asked Jan to add it to it for me, so you can definitely force a retreat. I know. Oh, here you go. Force retreat. Let's try that now, shall we? So in this case, we forced him to retreat. We know he's going to have to pass through here, so we throw grenades ready for him, and he has to run through the grenades, thus killing the crab. That's a dirty tactic. You can also drag select in front of your opponent's unit, which kind of makes them stop retreating a little bit. It gives you time to kill them. There's many dirty tactics you can use in warfare that will give you the edge, and only experience and research will give you access to these hidden dark arts. I say that hidden, I'm sure there's people watching this Twitch stream that feel, oh, I've seen that a million times, but beginners will not have done, and it will give the edge. It'll also give you a psychological advantage, and that's why dirty tactics comes under the profile of mind games. If you're executing great flanks, retreat kills, if you're executing grenades from behind bushes, if you're doing attack rounds through bushes, if you're doing things that your opponent does not expect, like they lay a mine, you lay them, instead of clearing the mine, you lay your own mine on top of it, so when they go over it, it detonates as a super mine. This is possible in Company Heroes, and learning the ins and outs of these dirty or dark arts is going to give you a huge edge. Next, let's talk about attitude. And attitude has many guises, and I'm going to get onto it right second, but I'm going to go grab a coffee, guys, because I've got 3 games to ob soon, and this monstrous guide is going to be awesome. But we're just going to have a quick coffee break, so be right back. Thank you. Right then, and we're back. So I just said on Twitch chat, is there anything I've missed so far? And Orange Pest says winning. I forgot to win. That's pretty big, and that comes with attitude. It comes with my next section here. Attitude is huge, and Company Heroes, as you may or may not know, is based around RNG. Yes, everything's kind of quasi-simulated, and with that, there are roles. So things have likelihoods of happening, and in the heat of the moment, you have no idea what's going to happen. And there's no way of knowing, quite frankly. So everything in the game has an option. Like every shot fired has an option. It can all be so random at times, but there's beauty in that chaos, because if you play properly and you play with good strategy and tactics, the RNG will work in your favour. If you had two completely equal players, of course, playing the exact same way, it would be a random game not worth playing, but that's never the case. There's too many other factors. So dealing with RNG, if you were to, example, have one of the worst RNG things that could happen, you went into enemy base with a Stuart light tank to finish off a squad. The enemy base bunker penetrates your Stuart and gives it a main gun destroyed critical. So that would be absolutely awful. That would be one of the worst things that could ever happen, quite frankly. There's a way to do that. Critical hits, here we go. Vehicle criticals, there's a lot of them. There's a lot of things that could happen. In Company Heroes 1, one of the most famous one. Here we go. Destroy main gun critical. So you'd then, upon going into the enemy's base, you would then be without a main gun. How terrible would that be? Also, it can happen with main tanks fighting against one another. If there's some small arms fire and damage in excess of what's usually expected, it can cause a main gun destroyed critical. And how frustrating would that be in a game? And it's out of your control. You can only control these things: the practical, the strategy, the tactics. So dealing with RNG, you have to let it go. You have to play in a way that gives you the best chance at survival. And if shit happens, it happens. You have to rise above it and play and keep coming until it happens to your opponents. And then you will get the reverse side, which is obviously good RNG, as opposed to bad RNG, which is when it happens badly. Hopefully, in the next Company Heroes, we have to do less organisation in tournaments, because at the moment we have to use a mod that removes a lot of the worst RNG from the game. So hopefully, in future iterations, the RNG is a lot more dependable. In like it's based on tactics and strategy rather than being completely third-party random events. But anyway, dealing with losses. Now, dealing with losses is very difficult. I lose a game, to be honest, it can ruin my evening. I win a game, it can make me feel good heading into the weekend. And the psychology is very difficult, but losing with losses in a game itself is something you just have to do. There is a certain amount of rebound ability and ability to get back into a game. If you were to have an early Grenadier loss, like this squad is to die, you have the option of just, okay, I'm going to be defensive for a while, I'm going to regroup, I'm going to build another Grenadier. And you have to be able to know how much you can take a loss and be fine with it, or what weakened position is tenable. You don't want to waste your time fighting from outside of your base sector. If you've got, for example, this was your units left and your enemy had a full army, you would give up. But you have to be able to, in Company Heroes, to not only deal with RNG, but deal with losses, because they will happen. You should be able to take a loss in Company Heroes. You shouldn't want to, but you should be able to do so, because then if you're playing well, your opponent will eventually take a loss as well. And that's all we're trying to get towards, is your opponent taking a loss as well. So you've got taking the losses as they happen in the battle. You've also got to deal with winning. Now, I was playing a game in a casual tournament yesterday, only yesterday evening, right? And I was winning. This guy was top 150. I was really proud of myself. I had my entire army dominating him, and I took the foot off the gas. I got complacent, and complacency breeds failure. So dealing with winning is just as vital in Company Heroes 2 as dealing with losing. Losing, you have to have the urge to continue competing, because there's that many ways to get back into the game. The RNG can swing things back into your favour, but winning's just the same. You can't afford to stop fighting as hard as you got to that point. So you got to this point by being really aggressive. You just need to get this much further. But if you're not as aggressive as you were, it might not happen. So you have to be able to deal with winning just as much as losing in Company of Heroes. If you don't have the right psychological profile, you're going to lose in the long run. So there's a lot to take into account, and that's why I put it in the attitude section. And also, we're going to talk about if you're losing or winning games, analysing your own replays is a huge proponent of getting better. But that comes on into a later section. This was primarily attitude of playing. Now then, the thing you've all been waiting for, we are now going to observe some live games, and we're going to put all of this into practice. The way we're going to do it is we're going to start with a very good game. We're going to watch the first 10 minutes, then a mid-rank game, and then a pretty poor game between absolute beginners. We're not here to mock them. I've got other content that does that, recently at least. We're here to show you the difference and show you what it's meant to look like, what it looks like if you're improving, and what it looks like when you're an absolute beginner. What's the best way to do that? Yes, we're going to do at best first, and then we're going to go down to beginner, and then we're going to go to improving. I think that's the best way to do it, because then it shows you the improvement scale. So a little bit out of order there. It's going to go best, beginner, improving. Okay, let's start then, shall we? Let's go over to this screen here, and we've got... This is where my annotations will come in a little bit more. We're going to spectate a game. As I say, we're going to do best first, sort by ranking. It's Artem Sex God versus Orange Pest. And Orange Pest, we've already seen his stream once in the seminar, so this is a perfect chance to get into this, pause it a little bit, and break down what makes Orange Pest such a good USF player, and what makes Artem such a good Wehrmacht player. We're going to times 2 through a little bit of... Oh god, we've got all this to worry about first. We've got 1 minute of time to kill. Let's talk about the map Nexus. Nexus has 4 cutoffs here. It's one of the best auto match maps, and it's got a munitions cutoff there. So that's a very interesting cutoff system, where all these big high points, the fuels and the munitions, have distinct cutoffs. Munitions, therefore, are something you can cut off independently of the rest. Your strategy is probably going to be based around this central area and defending it. Because of these large concrete constructions, it's very difficult to apply pressure evenly to the centre. If you apply pressure with machine guns and AT guns here, you leave yourself exposed there. So therefore, this narrowness to the centre and the exact centre is difficult to navigate. You also have 2 distinct fighting areas in the south. You've got... we could have let Fog of War off for all of this. You've got this one here with the fuel. The problem is that, as you can see, there are sight-blocking walls around it. In the north, very similar. Big sight-blocking wall here. The fuel is there. It makes Nexus a very interesting map to play on. It's seen many big World Championship battles. Artem, as Wehrmacht, is going to want to do what I said. Or he could go for some interesting infantry. You go for the Osttruppen, perhaps, which kind of paper over the cracks of the Grenadier's vulnerability. We have Orange Pest starting with a traditional kind of rear echelon start. I'm going to pull up my casting script. I've got a different script for casting. It helps me a little bit. So you've got the rear echelons and then a rifleman squad. As I say, we're going to times 2 through a little bit of this. But we can't. It's live. His capping order is to go for the nearest point first, and then he's going to go for this fuel afterwards. We've got the infantry section... Sorry, got the infantry company being built by the Pioneers. It's built on the edge of the base sector there, so you can reinforce and get onto the battlefield more quickly. So when he retreats a squad, it retreats to there. He can then pull it to here, or move command it to there. Then he can reinforce it, and the time it takes to reinforce, he's then quicker onto the battlefield. Pioneers here going for the next point. I can talk about this forever, to be honest. Riflemen are going to go where the rear echelons are also going. This is Orange Pest consolidating his approach. He's going to go for this fuel, and he's going to be unlucky if the MG also goes south. Okay, so we're going to have an engagement earlier than we anticipated. Pioneer will stay with the machine and Gewehr because their sight range is so large compared to the MGs, which is a lot shorter. They can't see as much, quite frankly. Grenadiers are next out. He's going for a traditional build order. This is fantastic from a learning perspective because it's traditional build orders all round. Orange Pest's second rifle, however, is going to go to cap some of these points up here. We have our very first engagement, right? Let's analyse this. Both units are out of cover. Orange Pest has already capped this, and he's already doesn't want any of it. The reason you don't want to engage in the open against Grenadiers earlier on is because he doesn't yet know where the machine gun is. If the machine gun fires on him, he's going to get suppressed, and that could mean his squad has to retreat. In the early game of a battle, the least retreating you have to do, the absolute better. So that's not a proper sentence, but whatever. You can also see that the rear echelons here are building a tank trap. A tank trap will operate as heavy green cover. So the fact that it'll be on a fuel point will be really advantageous. If he can keep the riflemen in combat and possibly get them behind this heavy cover here, he can really go for this fuel. The machine gun going into the middle shows that Artem Sexgod is not as good of a player as Orange Pest. He's not as efficient because the machine gun should be fighting in the early game as the Wehrmacht. It is not a capping unit, even though he's using it as one. So Orange Pest should be winning a lot of these early game situations, and we expect him to do so because he is a better player. He's top 10 worldwide right now in the Master League's rankings, and he's done that through tournament wins, which is... I'm going to turn this down a little bit because I don't want it to overpower me. So because they were behind heavy cover, they win this battle. Riflemen were able to stay alive in the situation and also then pick on the Pioneers on retreat. They're not going to pick that squad off on retreat because the individual health left on the one soldier is quite high. If you can see that as it's nearly at 25%, meaning that guy, his health is quite good. So Orange Pest did not pursue him, try and get more shots off, because it's unlikely he's going to kill him. And you can see that on the health bars. MG's now coming into battle. I ask you, what has he gotten from capping this munitions point? It's not linked to anything. And yes, as probably the most veteran caster in elite level tournament caster in this game's history, I'm able to pick out this much from Artem Sexgod. He's a god of sex. He's also top 20 player worldwide, and even he makes mistakes. That is how humbling it is to try and master Company of Heroes. Only players like Isilda, Loveness, Devem have ever gotten close, quite frankly. And it's just getting close. There's still so many inefficiencies on display. MG was out of combat, meaning he now does not have fuel. We have Rifleman. This is interesting from Orange Pest. And I'll tell you why this is interesting. He hasn't got time to link up this cutoff here and take this fuel without making himself feel vulnerable. Yes, he probably could have capped this by now, but he's committed to a time situation here where he's behind heavy cover, and he also wants to win this first engagement up here. He doesn't want to give a chance for Artem Sexgod to even get one fuel. He's secured this one in the south. He's happy with that, but he doesn't want to even give him chance to get up here. So rather than try and cap it, and then a squad maybe gets into this garrison or maybe attacks him before he can attack the squad back, then he might not win this engagement. So Orange Pest is basically saying, I'm going to sit on this. I don't even want to cap it. I'm going to put myself behind heavy cover, and that's the mechanics of cover for you. It's better to be prepared and to make an enemy fight on your terms than it is fight on your opponent's terms. That is the advantages of cover. Right. So he's got Rifleman waiting here in a standoff. He's got a standoff up here. If we can times 2 past some of this, it would be advantageous. Rifleman was seen there by the heavy machine gun, but he was able to react in time without being suppressed. It takes roughly 2 bursts of the HMG 42 in order to suppress you. We have a commander choice from Orange Pest. It's a very good commander. It gives Rangers, which are a very good close quarter combat infantry section. Infantry squad. We also have Rifleman field defenses, meaning that Riflemen will be able to plant sandbags, as seen here. So he's not just using green cover here now, he's also using it on the fuel point. In 1 versus 1, it's a very common tactic to put heavy cover behind points because you can't actually get the benefit of it as the enemy as easily. So using this commander, he's able to do that. So he's taking his moments until he's able to plant heavy cover. That goes to show just how important heavy cover is to play. It really is. It's the daddy, quite frankly. If the directional cover, the rear echelons are actually suffering a little bit there, and they're going to lose that battle easily and not hold out as long as they could have done. MG42 has been picked off by this 4-man rifle squad because it isn't behind cover, and they have suffered casualties, meaning they're going to have to go back to base soon. Riflemen are fighting in the centre here. Just saw barrels explode somewhere. I want to check out what that was. I think we're okay. Just heard a shudder on my screen. There was a lot of ambient explosions on this map in particular. Riflemen finish capping, closed the distance on the Pioneers. They outnumber them 5 guns to 1. But did you notice there, because they closed the distance against MP40s, they actually lost a rifleman. So that was a little bit inefficient from Orange Pest. It wasn't perfect, at least. But you can afford to make small mistakes like this as long as you're not making huge glaring errors. Orange Pest will be teching for the Lieutenant next. The Lieutenant will give him access eventually, once he's researched it, for the Stuart and the M20. It may actually be good in this particular game to go for... Oh, there's a battle up here. Notice there I couldn't locate the battle because it was directly above me. I didn't know if it was above or below me because my left-right channel of my headphones, I had a binary decision to make. I could have just opened the tap map, and it would have helped me a lot more in that endeavour. Lieutenant's now out, so soon we'll have the mechanised platoon command post teching, researching, whatever you want to call it. We also have light mechanised coming out. This is because he's gotten battle phase 1 unlocked. He's going to go for the Stuart most likely here, but to be honest, because of his fuel control, not Stuart, sorry, the 222 scout car, because of his fuel control, you'll notice he's not able to afford this 522 quite yet. It costs 30 fuel, and he only has 20. So that means he's been hurting in this game. He's had his fuel harassed quite a lot. He's getting bullied around. Good flank here by Orange Pest on the Grenadiers, and Artem is forced to retreat. Again, being bullied off the fuel. The sandbag situation also indicates that the Lieutenant is going to win this battle most likely. The Grenadier is already low on health. Yes, there's a Pioneer to help, but he didn't arrive in unison. And the Lieutenant's going to keep that fuel, and he's going to have this harassed. A scout car arriving in the 5th minute is not really what you want. I could go on talking forever about this level of play. It is possible to do so, but what's even easier is to talk about absolute beginners, because the mistakes they'll make will be tremendous compared to these players. These players are hardened, battle-hardened veterans. They make very few mistakes, and the margins are sometimes subjective. And we're going to be into a good cast here. It's going to be a Stuart versus a 222, and then probably a pack gun. Orange Pest should win this decisively based on what we've seen thus far. So let's go around oh no, we're going to go to beginners next, aren't we? That was it, sorry. Let's go to the earliest observable game, which is Dargus versus 7th. Again, it's Wehrmacht versus USF, so it's a shame that I'm not going to give you... I could have done that, couldn't I? I wish I'd chosen maybe different factions. To be honest, I'm probably going to have to stitch the videos together now. Let me just check that, actually. Unfortunately, I did have an outage during this. It's probably 2 different videos. Yep, 2 different videos, so I'm going to have to edit it anyway. So let's... Yes, indeed. So this is going to be our beginner game now. We're going to talk about Dargus and 7th now. They are beginner players playing as those very same factions. I'll pull up their CELO, which is something you can use to find players' ranks. It's going to do a scan in 7 seconds. And this can be found on the CoH.org website. It's just a great tool, to be honest. So it's rank 3,412 versus 1,928. So the American player 7th is top 2,000 and Dargus is top 3,000. And that, to be honest, Dargus is as low as it goes. There aren't that many more players in the game. In 1 versus 1 active, at least. There's probably about 10,000 worldwide, maybe 20,000, somewhere in that region. But active, there's far fewer, because people go, they play other games, they come back to the series. Let's talk about Dargus, though, and let's see what he does. So this is good so far. It's not the ideal placement of the infantry company, though. It could be closer to the edge of the base. and that would give him the ability to reinforce in enemy territory a little bit easier. He's gone for a strange commander that people don't often use. Luftwaffe is one that has, to be honest, it's just a strange one. Supply drop is pretty good because, you know, you don't have to go tier 2 to get the pack. MG's solid choice out here, and we have the Pioneers, of course, are probably going to group up with it. Meanwhile, we have 7th. His capping order is pretty decent. Well, no, it's not decent. He's prioritizing victory points. Victory points don't mean victory points. Victory points are, you know, it's inefficient. Yes, he's going to have this victory point for now, but if he'd gone for fuel, if he'd gone for munitions, he'd have them for a longer time because he'd be able to build up a better fighting force and keep them for a longer time. Let's go over to the MG here has been able to just go straight past the rear echelon squad and take this strong garrison point. Now 7th is in a very familiar situation that a lot of beginners are going to find themselves in against grizzled veteran players, or in this case just Dargus, because he's up against a garrison as USF, and to be honest, my money is on the fact that he's going to have difficulty dealing with him. If you're a beginner player, probably get a mortar would be the best option here. His capping order has not been ideal. He's gotten this victory point, but to what end? It's already going to be taken away from him. Pioneers are currently capping in the north. They're just doing their best, I see. Riflemen grouping up in the south, and they're just going to have to ignore that machine gun for now. Again, going for victory points. This is inefficient. You don't want to be doing this. You want to be targeting the resources, and that will let you build an army. That will let you control the victory points. Riflemen are grouping up here. What's his tactic here? What's his strategy? He's just going for points, and he's ignoring the machine gun in the center, it seems. Meanwhile, Dargus is using good control of... He's going for a second machine gun as well now. This is not good from 7th at all. This is not representative of how play is meant to look. Going for a fighting position this early on is poor. Fighting positions cost manpower, and they are immobile. So, although yes, he may control this fuel, what if you go for the cut-off here? He won't control the fuel anymore. A fighting position can't turn around once it's set up. So that is inefficient. Top level players will likely pull their anti-tank guns up and go for a flank. He's also putting a rear echelon squad inside, and as you can clearly see, the beginner level of play does not represent the higher level of play, and quite frankly, you'll see here these units are on negative cover. Negative cover is the opposite of light cover. It gives you increased received accuracy. As you can clearly see, this is not representative. The riflemen are going to be on the move now. They're going to push up to the grenadier. The grenadier is behind heavy cover, and he won't win this engagement just to sheer weight of numbers, but to be quite frank, that's a good retreat by Dargus, by the way. He saw that he wouldn't win, and he got a kill. Unfortunately, he did suffer a kill, but we saw that 7th was moving across negative cover, and although he did win the engagement, it wasn't ideal. One problem with Dargus, though, so far, he's only issued one command with his MG, and that was to go into the central garrison here. If he'd freed the MG from that central garrison, he could have attacked the rifleman himself and defended much better. He could have won this engagement perhaps, but as you can clearly see, even in 3 minutes, it's very difficult to commentate on beginner level play. It's much easier to pick fault with top level players that know what they're doing, because everything will be perfect minus a few things, so you can pick out the few things. Or there is intermediate players such as myself who have all best intentions, have done their research, but still have glaring errors. And that they are glaring, and they're much more frequent. So let's concentrate on that. We're going to go to page 3. And we're going to go for 2 players that look like they know what they're doing. Kenodox versus Boxman. We have a British player now versus a Wehrmacht player. We've got the app I told you about, CELO, running. Let's wait for our scan. Kenodox is scanned, but Boxman is elusive at this point. So let's see if it rescans. There he is. 908 versus 1,447. To be honest, about the mid-rank of players, that's pretty much par for the course because the ELO is so weak at that level, you can jump around quite quickly. So Kenedox made an error there. His situational awareness was poor. He thought he was north, and he tried south. Sorry, so he thought he was. He thought he was north, didn't he? He thought he was here. He started moving down here, and he's actually here. So if we go on TAC map, I can guarantee you he's not a. So if we go on follow camera mode, so this is from Kenedox's position, I can guarantee you he's a twitchy camera mover. He doesn't use TAC map. He tends to use long sweeping movements to get to where he needs to go, and that's why he was disorientated at the start. He's not actually relying on the map enough, and that's very inefficient. Elsewhere, we've got Boxman, who's simply got the infantry sections to deal with. He is the Brits. They have very linear build orders, and although they have great voice lines, they're not as fun to watch. So that was from Boxman's position now. This is what his camera sees. He's issuing commands over here. He's also he's getting his assault infantry section ready. You can see that he also is not using TAC map because he had to go to them to select them. So it's two inefficient players that have not set themselves up for success. But that might make for a great game. We just don't know at this stage. Let's go off follow camera mode now. We've done both players, and let us evaluate the situation. So this is a good sandbag to place from Boxman because it's only accessible from one direction. If we highlight that for you now, the green cover is on this side. It is not on this side anymore because he's boxed it off basically. So it's very good to place a sandbag like that. We also got a kind of strange one placed there because that's accessible on both sides, so that could be better. Assault infantry sections are piling up on the eastern flank here. This makes Boxman's cut off here now, so he could get cut off. It is possible. Meanwhile, the MG is operating as a capping unit on a victory point. That is inefficient. You don't usually want to see that, to be honest. Much better to try and be a little bit aggressive earlier on. Let's try and get some engagements and then judge their individual decision making. So as you can see, even at mid-level play, sandbags are all important. Kenedox is going to do okay in this engagement because he has an MG, but this garrison only has one window on this side, so it's not going to be great for fighting. It's only going to be okay for defense. Watch one rifle fire out of it. There you go, one rifle. Meanwhile, Pioneers, they could have been attacked by the infantry section there because they were actually in building mode. If Boxman had seen that they were in building mode, they actually incur more damage whilst in building mode. He could have hit a halt order on his infantry section to take brief advantage of that mode. He could have gotten a kill quite quickly there, but he didn't, and that's just situational awareness and quickness of reaction times. A good flank is coming in here. Now, if you want to flank your opponent's MG, click on your opponent's MG. You will see the arc of fire, and you can take full advantage of that. Which he is doing here is Boxman. Kenedox has closed the distance in the south with the Pioneers, but because the infantry section had light cover, they get a little bit of a rate of fire bonus, if I remember correctly. So it's not great to fight up against them like that. They are going to lose that engagement. And you just heard, we're getting flanked. Indeed they are. It's a great voice line from a great game. And MG is going to get forced away there. There's many things we can talk about, many things we can analyse here in the mid-level of play because it already starts to be a lot more logical than beginners. He backs away from this because it's a heavy cover engagement and he fancies the bathtub. Now, he thought the bathtub was going to be heavy cover because it's very similar to a lot of objects in the game that are heavy cover. So he didn't want this, but also it's possible he was worried about the close quarter combat speciality of these Sten guns. And that's a pretty damn good call, to be fair. I think that's what he was going for there. He wanted to back away from the Sten guns and keep up with the Kar 98K's superior range, or damage at range, rather. Superior weapons profile at range is the best way to say it. And so, yeah, that's a good decision by Kenedox. So already you can start to see their decision-making makes a lot more sense than you give it credit for. even at intermediate level. Now Boxman's in a tricky state because he's been surrounded by 2 grenadiers and he's not at distance, so he's making poor use of these very expensive to reinforce assault infantry sections. So he should retreat, and indeed he does. He does have reinforcements arriving, so that's probably why he stayed in the fight for a little bit longer than was mathematically advantageous. So he's got the Vickers coming in with the Grenadiers now. And there we go. Puts the pressure down on the Grenadiers, but he's surrounded still. Heavy cover units can't get suppressed as quickly as others, and he's losing a lot of individual soldiers now, which is going to cost him a lot to reinforce, unfortunately for him. He almost even lost a squad there, which would have been awful in the early game. That said, he now has a flank in here. Let's see how quickly Kandox reacts with the MG. Not very quickly at all, and that's indicative of mid-level of play. If he wanted to be careful there, he could have just issued an attack move, if you remember correctly, and the MG probably would have set up somewhere around here and had much greater fire-on effect on the infantry section. As it is, they're not going to do much at all. They're going to set up behind this wall. It's pretty poor play. However, because of that poor play, it's now given Boxman the opportunity to attack it, which is probably not expected. And this is probably going to, yeah, fortunately for him, these squads cause the retreat. And now, if he focus fires it, he could even get a squad wipe off, which is completely just... He doesn't even deserve it. Does he get it? Can the Grenadiers kill the squad? There you go. So sometimes a little bit of chaos, a little bit of unpredictability actually gets results in Company of Heroes. It's not all predetermined. It's not all the best tactics. Sometimes chaos reigns. And that's the beauty of this particular game. Is you can look into these tactical situations all you like, but then sometimes they hammer you in the face. And unfortunately for Boxman, he saw, oh, this MG's misclicked, I can take advantage. No, he couldn't. 2 Grenadiers on the left side, forced to retreat, and he nearly died because of it. And you'll now see that in base, all of these squads are reinforcing. It's 28 per reinforcement. It's going to take him time, and then he has to heal them because they're hurt as well. So yeah, he's suffering pretty badly here. One good thing for Boxman, though, he has had this high fuel for the majority of the game thus far, which means he's going to be able to get a vehicle out or a tank much sooner than he otherwise would have done. So there's a lot we can talk about there, and there's a lot we can find in OBS mode that ties in all of these concepts we've been discussing in today's seminar. But the one thing I'm now going to leave you with, guys, is you have to play yourself. You have to get out there and get into ranked mode and get busy. So let me talk about that next, and let me go through how ranked works, and the other sections, how being awesome works. And that's not about me, that's about you. So, ranked mode, auto match. Get out there, apply what this seminar's taught you, and just get out there and do it. I trust you, the lower ranks of this game truly exist, and some of these players are hilariously bad. You will be able to beat them if you apply the knowledge from this seminar. How ranked works in general, it goes from rank 0 to rank 20. I'm currently rank 12, which is pretty low by my standards. I have been as high as rank 15, maybe 16 once in Company Heroes history. But yeah, my ranks aren't the best right now. I do have a little bit of ladder anxiety, as they call it, but to be honest, a lot of the time these days I do play for fun. I actually just get a kick out of playing. I love playing this game, and I love just getting out there and having a good battle. Recently I've been having a lot of games as Soviets. Before that I was trying more Wehrmacht. My Wehrmacht does need massive improvements, but you just have to get out there. That's my place in the world at the moment, rank 515, which gives me, so that's my leaderboard position is 515, and level 12. Well, the ranking works is in that way. You've got all 5 factions, you have a rank on each, you have the different game modes. I'm advising to try 1 versus 1, but there's many ways you can try it. And then, of course, it goes all the way up to leader position 1, which is currently PFC, a player we already looked at today. He's got 278 wins, 100 losses, giving a ratio of 74. His player card looks something like this. He plays a crap ton. He's already played today, most likely. Some of his games are really quick because he's able to dominate people. Some, versus very good players like Inca Una, can last an awful long time, 53 minutes for some of them. So ranked, it does take a long time to play these games sometimes, so you do have to have free time, and Company Heroes might have to be your dominant hobby for a while if you want to get good at it, but it is worth it. And that's what I'm saying by be awesome. Go for it. Have no fear. Just try and be the best version of yourself you can be with regards to this hobby. If you get beaten, don't get deterred. Analyze your replays and, try and get good at this hobby. That tens of thousands of people in the world currently practice Company Heroes play, and they get as good as they can do. And some of the battles they have are absolutely awesome. And if you can join them, if you can join that elite brotherhood of Company Heroes players, you've got a hobby that'll last the next 10 years at least, because Company Heroes 3 is right around the corner. People have been playing ranked Company Heroes since 2006 now, and it's got no signs of slowing down. So it's a game that's worth learning, in my opinion. So if you analyze your replays, you use all of the stuff at disposal on this guide, you're going to have a good time. You'll also make some great friends, because this community is full of people that are mature rather, you say in English, and they want to help each other, and the toxicity levels are very low. If you stay away from the kind of like 4v4 casual trench coat, neckbeard side of the community, if you get into the more pure side, in my opinion, the competitive side, it's full of people just trying to be good and just trying to have a good time, to be quite frank. And there's a lot more intellectuality of trying to get better, and a lot more refined conversations that happen, and the jokes are just as funny. It's just as fun to be into the more competitive side, but in my opinion, it's way more rewarding, and the friends you make will be really good ones of like-minded people. And finally, don't give up. You will get knocked back, you will go on lost streaks, and as long as you're getting something from it, as long as you're learning what better strategies and tactics to apply and getting that all-important experience, the practical experience, you're going to have a real good time in the long run. It's going to be go from being a shit game to being a very good game indeed. So yeah, that's today's seminar. Unfortunately, OBS crashed halfway through that. I was originally going to do one take for all of this. Now I'm going to have to download it and render it. So if you made it this far and you want to show support, please consider subscribing to me on Twitch and YouTube, primarily YouTube, of course. That's where you're probably watching this. And also, if you've really enjoyed it, you've got a lot from it, please consider using the tip donate link and buy me a beer, because I think I've put 4.5 hours of Saturday into this so far. So yeah, that'd be lovely. Usually I put all of my donations into tournaments. In this case, I am going out for a drink tonight, so it'd be nice to think that one of you guys has given me a tip. Don't usually ask for that, so yeah, but hopefully I've put enough into that, so I feel I deserve it at least. So yeah, that's my seminar on how to be good at Company Heroes, or how to get competent at least, so you can really enjoy it for the depth it has to offer. Thank you for watching. Good luck in your training, and hopefully see some of your games in the auto match ladder, and we may just be able to spectate them and see how far you've come. Thank you, and goodbye.